Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Um, so today I was going to discuss my third manic episode. It was a little different than my first two episodes in that I saw this one coming many months ahead, and rather than like adjust myself so it didn't happen, it just kind of happened anyway. Um, so just to kind of discuss like some of the events that led up to this episode. I broke up with my ex. Um, this was 2 summers ago, so I believe it was 2018. And broke up with my ex. And that was a very stressful event for me in my life. It was kind of a traumatic event, and it brought up some other issues I had with, abandonment and trauma, and it was very painful. Um, And one of the ways that I coped with the breakup was by, like, more or less just kind of starving myself. I went from weighing something like 170 down all the way to about 138, which, for someone who's like 5'7", it's not like too skinny, but for me it was like very skinny. It was a huge change. And I dropped the weight in an unhealthy amount of time. I mean, I literally lost like 35 pounds in like 2, 3 months, It was not healthy weight loss. Um, it also wasn't really weight loss accompanied with physical exercise. I just starved myself a little bit. I mean, it's not a healthy coping mechanism at all. And I remember as early as like midsummer, I started feeling like really poorly. Um, I went to go pick my dad up from the airport. This was like, I want to say August, and I just remember reeling in anger, like just being incredibly angry, and not being able to control it whatsoever. So, that was like leading into that, and I was also starting a new job. I was teaching, and when I started teaching, my health was just all over the place. Um, I remember there was a day where I showed up to work, and then after work I was just like crying hysterically. Um, and I like picked up all the things my ex gave me and I threw them into the Hudson River, and I just literally cried for like a straight day. And I had a lot of days like that where I would like leave work, get in the car, and just start crying, and I like wouldn't stop crying the rest of the day. And when you work around kids, you have to like put up a face and front for them and like look really tough and strong. But I was like crumbling. And then at the same time this was going on, I tried to maintain that kind of unhealthy weight. Um, I tried to maintain it for a super long time. Uh, so I want to say, let's see, September, October, December, January. So about 4 months into this job, um, I met this girl through my friends. She was the ex of one of my good friends. We'll just call her Lily. I don't use anyone's actual name in these videos. So I met Lily through a bunch of my friends, and this was like the first, in reality, like the first girl I'd interacted with since my big breakup, and I was like kind of in that early stage of mania where like things still kind of feel somewhat okay. I wasn't quite at the tipping point where like I was crashing, but I lost a lot of weight. I didn't feel good about myself, but I felt kind of that manic high, where I had a lot of confidence. And I remember I asked the girl to hang out with me, and like things just kind of snowballed out of control. I was like started hooking up with her, and like looking back on it, I wasn't reading into like any of her cues, like whether or not she was comfortable. Um, and like when you're manic, you don't really pay attention to like what's going on around you so much. I was like very manic. And she was not like super into me, and like not to say that like I did anything like super inappropriate. I don't think I did. We just kind of hooked up for a short span of time, but like because I was very manic, I was in a very like emotionally um like lost spot. It like meant a lot to me because it was like the first contact I'd had with someone after my ex, and I just like read way too much into it, and like got very attached, not to her but to like the idea of being back in a relationship, because to me that was like what was going to fix everything. Was, like if I got back in a relationship, um I would feel better. And I remember there was like one day where I slept over her house, where I just like got that feeling of like safety that you get from being in a relationship. And make no mistake, BP is to some extent a social illness. There was a study done, I forget who did it, but they said that if you're in a stable relationship for 2 years, the effects of BP um, almost completely wear off for a lot of people. And I did. For a brief period in time, I felt okay. Like I fell asleep almost like instantly at her house. And for someone who has like an illness, that feeling is worth its weight in gold. Like the feeling of safety in your own head, it has no price. Um, so, uh, as things usually do when you start to get manic, everything just kind of went to shit. Um, So she was like not looking to start a relationship with me, and in all honesty, it was like terrible circumstances to start a relationship. I'm really glad that it didn't work out in retrospect, but at the time it was like very devastating, and I tried to avoid her, just to kind of like recoup. But we had a couple of run-ins. One of them was a house show my friend was hosting. And I tried really hard to not go to the house show, but I was playing in it. Um, so I went anyway, and I ran into this girl, and we drank together. Which, like, if any of um, mania plus alcohol is just the outcome. It's like a Coke Mentos situation where nothing is gonna go well. And I had this um, brief interaction with her outside my friend's house where like she was crying and I was like really sad, and she was like drunk and I was kind of drunk, and she was like kissing my hand and telling me she was sorry, and that like I mean there were so many, like that whole like the red flags don't look red when you're wearing rose tinted glasses. Like this was like the reddest of red flags. And in my kind of like crazed manic state, um, I had this flashback, while she was crying of like uh, my my mom crying when I was a teenager, and her neighbor in Israel died, and she was like crying on the couch, like crying hysterically. It was this very vivid memory, um, and it was very intense. It was very scary, and like the mania was in full swing. I was like only sleeping like 3 hours a night, and even getting those couple hours of sleep was like I had to force it, in order for it to go through. Um, So that was rough. Um, and yeah, so after that night where I saw her at the show, and like my health was completely deteriorating, um, she sent me a message. And the message was basically like I messaged her first. I was like, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" Um, and she sent me back a message that was like, "I don't think a relationship between us would work out." And that was like the kindest thing she could have said, you know? I mean, it was very clear that like this was a train wreck waiting to happen. And in my manic state, I sent her like a million text messages in like 10 minutes. Because when you're manic, it's like you're like a you're like a bomb waiting to go off, you know? And this is like a big thing for me. So I sent her like a million text messages. I was like, can't believe like I give out so much and I get so little back. Like I thought this was gonna work out. I was like very sad. Um and she blocked me, or at least like thought she did. So like a week goes by and I was like very manic, very like panicked all the time. And there was like a Monday where I called her a bunch of times and she wasn't picking up. And she was like, "You need to respect people's boundaries," which again was like very fair. Like, I mean, when you're manic, you don't really think about this stuff. But she obviously didn't want to talk to me, and uh, that was like the last time I really talked to her. Um, and it was like a sad event in my life because I realized that like there were some things I needed to sort out before I got back in a relationship. Like I wanted to deal with my BP, um, like before I ever considered being in another relationship and have my life be in a much more stable place. Um, so after like or really as like this like thing kind of unfolded, I acknowledged like how my health was like deteriorating. I went to a doctor and I got an MRI scan and they said there was nothing wrong with my brain. Um, and I signed up for an outpatient program. And if you don't know what outpatient is, there's inpatient and outpatient. Inpatient is when you stay there. That's like when you go to a mental hospital. Outpatient is when you just go there to get treated and then you leave. And it's the first time I've ever done something like that, and it was fantastic. The group that I went to, it was like very supportive of me, and I met a lot of people from like different walks of life who were going through stuff, and it was like very helpful to me. And having that kind of support from like people who were still in their everyday lives, it felt really good to see people who were like real human beings going through stuff and still out there in the world. Because when you're in a mental health hospital, like the types of people who are in inpatient are just very different from the people who go to outpatient. So I did outpatient for I think the better part of 2 months. It got me through 2 winters ago. Um, and it took me it took me about a year before I started feeling better from that episode. It took me a full year. And only now am I really starting to like feel like my humanity is coming back to me. I mean, I still have some rough times every so often. My head feels funny. I have trouble falling asleep. I feel weird for a day. But generally, I feel a lot better. And what I learned from this episode, because this was the most recent one I've had, is that there are so many signs leading up to an episode. There's so much warning um, before something escalates to the point of like you are manic. Um, and Had I recognized those signs, had I slept more, had I eaten better, had I exercised, and seen the sun. The school that I used to work at has no windows, and I literally didn't see the sun ever. Um, had I done any of those things, I probably wouldn't have had a full-blown episode like I did. And yeah, it was like a rough thing. I haven't really tried uh, dating since that. I mean, I probably will one day. I think I just realized that like I wanted to do better, for myself. I wanted to like have my health sorted out. Um, Riding the BP roller coaster while trying to date is not fun. And I know like other people have different experiences with it. Um, but for me, it's just something I would rather sort through on my own. I don't want to be somebody else's problem at the end of the day. Um, I didn't even really want to be my ex's problem. Um, yeah, I mean that was the story of my third and final, hopefully, episode. And hopefully, I'll be able to, moderate myself now so I don't have future episodes. I think I've learned a decent amount about like what causes them, um, where they come from, and I realize they don't come out of nowhere. They there's a trend to them of kind of a lack of self-care, a lack of sleeping, and that's what leads to them. So, in the future, I'm gonna kind of redirect myself so that way it doesn't happen. Um, and that's about all I have to talk about my third episode. Um, so what I plan to talk about tomorrow is my first and really my only big relationship in my life, and like what it was like with my BP, um, and what I learned from it. So that's tomorrow, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.